Hi, I'm Effervescent. Welcome to Storiez. In this episode, we're looking at technology and innovation. It's a pretty exciting topic because us queer people are quite visible in the creative sector. You have musicians, designers, artists, and so many other queer folk who have come out proud and celebrate their professional careers. Within the tech sector, it's not as easy to find those legends, those software engineers, entrepreneurs, and individuals that are building tech enterprises. So I found this particular episode very interesting. For today's episode, we have an African American gentleman who will talk to us about his experience as a tech entrepreneur and a founder who has actually raised millions of pounds. Now, not many of you know, but I'm actually a trained computer scientist. I started out as a developer coding in Java, C++, and several other programming languages after I studied at Queen Mary here at University of London. And for me, tech was a no-brainer because it was clear that machines would become more ubiquitous than people. And I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do when I graduated. So I thought, study a degree that would help with the building blocks of everything. And it has helped. And since then, I've not only worked as an engineer, I've actually moved to the finance side, and I support mostly tech ventures with different aspects of their growth. But the fact that I am an engineer first helps with understanding how some of these tech entrepreneurs think and, advise them on how to add value to their company. Most businesses do not just need to have technology as part of their USP or unique selling point. They actually need that to survive. You have to be innovative in order to be able to get the customers to promote your services or products, or even just to run your operations a lot more efficiently. You can't think of any company in any sector that doesn't require innovation and technology to make it thrive. So this particular episode was pretty exciting because we dig deep into tech, entrepreneurship, and innovation across both sides of the pond. So in the episode we shot last summer with Gary Stewart, you will learn a little bit more about his journey as an entrepreneur and what he thinks about some of the technology and innovation trends in the UK as well as across the pond. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Slay Stories, the show where we discuss the topics that you, our viewers at home, are talking about. I'm Effervescent, and today we'll be discussing technology and innovation. To help me do that, I have with me the founder and CEO of Founder Tribes, Gary Stewart. Founder Tribes is a tech startup that is like a Tinder for founders, introducing them to the mentors and the funders that will help them to start up and scale up their businesses. Founder Tribes has actually raised $1.2 million since it got set up in November 2020. It's backed by a UK billionaire as well as several Silicon Valley unicorn founders. The members and users of Founder Tribes hail from across the US, the UK, and Africa. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Gary worked as a lawyer in New York, London, Madrid, and Barcelona. He graduated magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa from Yale College. He has twice been on the power list of the most influential Black people in the UK, and as if that wasn't enough, he'll be a visiting lecturer at the Yale Law School in the fall of 2021. Welcome, Gary.
Hey, good to see you again, Zube.
Thank you for coming. I was so looking forward to this episode.
Me too.
Lots of reasons. First of all, you embody entrepreneurship. You've been in tech startups for a minute. Mm-hmm. And you've recently launched Founder Tribes. I'd like to know, if you don't mind, you'd like to know a little bit more about Founder Tribes and what it is that the platform actually does.
Yeah, so I mean, after working at Wyra, a very large corporate accelerator where I had invested in 185 companies, now worth, I think, close to like $1.5 billion. You were there too,
Yes,
for a little
I
bit.
was.
I decided that there were certain things that weren't quite right about the model. One is that I didn't see the inclusivity that I would like, because usually you're only investing in up to 10 companies at a time. There are literally hundreds of millions of founders out there. Why shouldn't they also have the opportunity to be supported? And that the entire ecosystem also didn't really tend to invest in people who didn't look a certain way or come from certain backgrounds. So I think it's that black women in the UK get 0.02% of funding. Black people get 0.24% of venture capital funding. I think in the US, 40% of all venture capitalists went to Harvard or Stanford. This is a country with, I think, 380 million people, and 40% of the venture capitalists went to 2 schools. If you throw in Harvard, Penn, and MIT, you're talking about like 60 to 70% of venture capitalists went to 3 schools. To 5 schools. So it's kind of, there are a lot of issues out there. And as I thought, okay, what am I going to do in the next chapter of my life? It's really about, is there a way for us to use technology to solve some of these problems? In the way that Amazon made, shopping so much easier by just being able to do everything from home, asynchronously, when you want it, on demand, and have more information about the choices that you're actually being given. I thought founders needed the same sort of options. And so what it is that if you're a founder and you have an idea, you upload a 3-minute pitch. We give you immediate feedback based on Sequoia Capital, which is like the best VC in the world, 10 principles. And you can just like swipe and figure it out really quickly, so it's easy to give feedback. And then we then matchmake you with mentors based on superpowers. We really are focused on mentors who know what they're talking about. So many mentors it's like, you don't want an opinion, you want the right person who knows what they're talking about to help you. So that's what we're really trying to do with the matchmaking. And then finally, demystifying investment. So really putting you in touch with the right investor for your stage. And if you happen to look a little bit different, then making sure as well that, that's a person that kind of actually values diversity.
Absolutely. And investment is one key part of accelerating innovation and technology. And you alluded to venture capitalists earlier. For those that aren't aware, VCs are like the sort of personal trainers of, those tech startups that are trying to get to the next stage. They put the capital as well as the value-added services to support the scaling of companies. And you've mentioned that, most of that capital doesn't go to a diverse set of founders, and you're solving this within the founder tribes model.
Yes.
So what kind of metrics do you currently have? I know you only began in November last year, but what sort of metrics do you have on your user platform, and do you see any trends from engagement on the platform?
So we launched in February, and so far we have about 3,000 users across, as you said, Africa, the US, and the UK. That's kind of the main metric, because right now we're doing the app for free and just learning a lot from our users. We're relaunching version 2 of the app, which will be the commercial beta, in September, late August, September. And I think that what we're seeing is just kind of confirmation that there's so many founders out there that are just dying and hungry for some sort of attention. And there's so many founders out there as well that don't know how the game is played. So it's kind of like, when I was thinking about it, I was like, as you pointed out, like by background, I'm a lawyer. No one would ever say to you, you're a lawyer, go out there on day one and be a lawyer. Like, there's a process of education that gets you to the point where you feel comfortable, and then there's a process of like mentorship, or apprenticeship, like junior associates. Same thing with a doctor. Can you imagine if like you said to people who want to be doctors, okay, just start operating and you'll figure it out eventually. I think that entrepreneurship needs to be taken more seriously as an academic or professional discipline, which means like helping people to understand. Just because I have an idea doesn't mean I know what HR is, or marketing, or how to do sales or business development. These are all skills that are required from founders, but it's really difficult if you're a founder, especially if you don't come from the right quote unquote background, to figure out, where do I get the help?
Yeah. And this isn't your first time with the sort of tech startup. So I know you used to have a tech startup that you launched over in Spain. Do you want to talk through that a little bit, please?
My background, I guess, is like, maybe I was searching. So I was a lawyer, as you pointed out, in like London. And then I set up a tech company, first an offline business in 2000, and I think it must have been 4. That was okay. Then in about 2006, I realized that the key was recurrence and scale. And so then I raised some money, and to get other people to give you the money to fund your business, at least in part. So then we raised some money for that company. Eventually, it was a property search engine, very similar to Zoopla, but focused on Spain and Latin America.
Gotcha.
We eventually sold that late in 2016-ish. And then 2010, I went to go teach entrepreneurship after about 5-6 years of running my own business. I was kind of like my business partner at that point. You can do it. I'll be happy to just be a shareholder. And then in 2011, I started working at Wire until 2019. And then Founded Tribes happened after.
Fantastic. And for people that are setting up businesses now, you've already talked about how one needs to learn the structure, the framework, get onto Founded Tribes, preferably to get all the skills and matching mentors and funders to get them through to the next stage. Are there any specific sectors you feel within sort of technology and innovation that are quite hot right now, that if someone were thinking to start up a company, you'd recommend they explore?
Yeah, no, the way I think about it is don't think about the technology. The technology is just a means to an end. Technology allows you to scale more quickly than non-technology. But like really what you should think about is what's the problem that you are really passionate about solving, right? So for me, I knew that the problem I was passionate about solving was inclusivity. Like how can I level the playing field for entrepreneurs around the world? And then I had to figure out like, what are the technological solutions that I could use to help me to that end, right? But I think start with the problem that you're passionate about solving, because if not, entrepreneurship, if you're lucky, is a 15 to 20 year journey to becoming an overnight success. For you to kind of really stick with it that long, you really need to care about the issue that you're really trying to address. So I would say, look around the world, figure out what is it that really just gets me upset? Like what is it that no one else is really focusing on that I think needs to be solved? And then try and solve it. And then get a bunch of people who are equally as passionate about solving it. And then hopefully you and some of them are also, software developers, or you can find the software developers to then figure out, well, how can I bring that tech overlay to allow me to solve this problem more quickly and at scale?
Fantastic. And one final question. Obviously, you're American, from the Bronx.
Yo.
How does entrepreneurship, looking at the sort of tech and innovation elements, as well as raising capital, compare, given you've been in Europe for so many years now, both in the capital of, the heart of tech, as we like to think, in London, and in Madrid and Barcelona? How does that compare with the US? Are there pros, cons?
I know people are going to hate me for saying it, but there really is no comparison. I was looking at an article in the FT the other day, and there's more venture capital finance in the US than the next 10 countries, including China, combined.
Wow.
And then I think the other thing that's really interesting is when you look at like how wealth is created in different countries. In the US, it's mostly through entrepreneurship. In Europe, it's still mostly through inherited wealth, or in the case of the UK, through money laundering and stuff like that. So I think that like the way I would look at it is there's just so much more money in the US for entrepreneurship, and there's also a lot more interest in investing in diverse founders than anywhere else in the world. I think that outside of the US, the UK is a great ecosystem, but there's still a huge delta between the US and the UK, both in terms of the overall amount of money available, as well as in terms of who they want to invest in. The US is much more interested in diversity, I think, for the moment than the UK is.
Amazing. So there you have it. Shooting from the hip, Gary Stewart. As always, thank you so much for joining us on Slay Stories. And don't go anywhere, as we'll be back right after the break with our resident psychologist right here on Slay Stories. Thank you. Welcome back from the break. Here at Slay Stories, we have our resident psychologist, Riza. Hi, Riza. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So we have a question today from a member of our audience. And the first question is from an individual who has said they feel really tired, and they've been feeling really tired of life lately. They're experiencing a lot of hate around the fact that they are a transgender individual. What can they do to manage the situation, Riza?
Okay. Yes, feeling tired is one of the many symptoms of when people experience mental health difficulties. Often we think with mental health that it's just about our thoughts and our emotions and how we feel, but actually it can have a big impact on our physical health as well. So we often notice that people feel really tired, lethargic, sometimes even feeling really numb and having difficulties with eating or staying active. So mental health difficulties can have an impact on our physical health. I can also hear from what the person is saying is that actually, they're really tired of life, and I wonder if there is any difficulties around feeling suicidal. And this is quite common because what in the LGBTQ community, because of the systemic and societal kind of processes that are making them feel like worthless, making them feel as little,
Yeah.
making them feel as if they are not worth it, that can really impact on their emotions and their mental health. And these kind of feelings of feeling tired, feeling not worthy, feeling like there's no point, when those kind of things get exacerbated and are around for a long time, it can lead to suicidal feelings. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'll say there's also so many amazing trans role models. So I guess if they can look to some of these for inspiration, that might also help. There are people that are doing amazing things across pop culture, the world of business, etc.
absolutely. And that's one of the things, to kind of combat these feelings is to really connect with what's important to you. What are your values? Where can you find, like you said, people that you can look up to? But also who can you connect with to express those feelings? Because often the times when we have suicidal feelings, we want to keep them for ourselves, because we're ashamed of them. We think that it's wrong to have those feelings, but actually we have to do the opposite, which is actually expressing to people that you're feeling like this and getting the support that you need.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And the second statement is around a recent survey that was carried out by LGBT Hero. So they've conducted some research that suggests 79% of LGBTQ plus individuals have had or felt a negative impact on their mental health through this COVID period. And as we ease out of lockdown, as we begin to open up in London and around the world, what tips do you have for these individuals that they can use to manage their mental health?
Mm. Yes, I'm not surprised that the numbers have increased because for the LGBT community, because of the difficulties around the stigma, the discrimination, the isolation, rejection, that mental health can be impacted. So
Yeah,
during the lockdown, these kind of things are more exemplified, isn't it? We're more online, we see more things, we feel more isolated. And now that we're easing up, for some people that feels like, a relief. We can get out of this isolated space that we've been in for so long. But at the same time, it can also invoke a lot of feelings again, feelings about, having to be in large groups again, being in places where perhaps you will experience discrimination and stigma again, but also
yeah,
just in general, for everyone, easing out of lockdown is not something that can just be perceived as easy to do, because it's another adaptation that we're facing from being at home to going out again. So I would say that it's important to be kind and compassionate to yourself. If you don't if you have days where you feel like, actually, I don't want to go out, it's a bit too much or overwhelming if I go out with this group or in this event, and to also kind of think and reflect about what you will be okay to start with, and whether you can maybe take gradual steps to go out. But in terms of the easing of lockdown, I think those are the two main things: to kind of be compassionate and kind to yourself
yeah,
when you don't want to go out, but also at the same time think about ways to gradually go out, because if we want to avoid because it's so hard, then that will get worse, and then we start to isolate again a lot more. So yeah, try and do some gradual steps to go out, and
indeed.
think of what would be safe for you to do and feels comfortable for you, and then you can increase it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Riza, for those thoughtful contributions. And thank you, Gary, for joining us on this episode of Stay Stories. Last but not least, our audience, thank you. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. It's one word, Slay Stories. Till the next time, bye.
It's crazy because growing up in Ghana, I used to be able to go certain places and do certain things that right now they cannot even do. And it's like we're moving forward in times, but actually in certain countries they're moving backwards.
Yeah, for me, fashion is obviously personal because I remember my mom used to dress us up, my brother and I.
Nice.
As like we were twins, even though we weren't twins.
Right.
Yeah.
I got into the gaming industry very randomly, actually. I was headhunted a little bit more than 7 years ago.
It removes some of maybe the fear of, could I write a book? Because I could mentally imagine it's just a series of articles. And because I've been writing for the last few years on the topic, I was able to sort of break it down in that way.
We need to decide what our future is. Do you want a 90-year-old man in office telling you how to live your life when the century has just turned the clock again and you're still perpetuating the same things that their grandmother taught them?
I have people who look at me and they're like, oh, you're not a personal trainer just because I'm plus size. And then they meet me at the gym and everything is different, you know.
When I first joined the Royal Shakespeare Company, which was directly following drama school, there were 2 of us in that company at the time, of hue, of color.
Let's say that I come out, let's say they find out that I'm gay, they could cut me off, right? Like, and so, and maybe that was an extreme, but I feel like that kind of motivated some of the things that I was doing in my professional life, ensuring that I was pushing really hard there. That I could stand on my own 2 feet if and when that were to ever happen.
I didn't know who to approach with, who to approach at that time. So that's why I started making this advocacy to fight for the transgender community in the healthcare industry.
This kind of toxicity and homophobia mainly affects feminine, more effeminate gay men much more, which is obviously an issue and it's a problem. Which is one of the things I try to use my platform to speak on and talk about.